Hi, welcome back to another edition of Max and Nikki 1000th Time Reactions,
where we react to a song after listening to it for our 1000th time.
We release 3 videos a day,
Every day.
so make sure to hit that subscribe button
And turn on post notifications.
so you don't miss out on all this great content of ours.
That's right.
So what are we going to listen to right now, Max?
We're going to listen to Too Much Heaven by the Bee Gees.
Now, we
Now, we
haven't heard
actually-
this song 1,000 times. We've heard it a few times, and
Heard
it's
it
a good
few times,
song.
actually, but I
But, you know,
must
it was a
confess
su-
I have not listened to it a whole lot, not
But
that much.
The
yeah.
reason we're reacting to it right now is because it has been a recommended video, a suggested video by some of our subscribers, and we thought, hey, let's do it. This is what the fans want. The fans
we
shall
give
get.
the fans what they want.
If you're
Well,
new to
we can't do it all the time, but we'll eventually get to these songs that you guys recommend. Hopefully all of them at some point.
If you're new to the channel, the way we do things here is we listen to a song all the way through without pausing so we don't ruin the vision of the artist. And then after that, we'll talk about the song, talk about a reaction, get in depth with it with analysis and whatnot.
But before we do that, though, as we normally do, we like to mention that we have another YouTube channel called Max and Nikki.
On which we perform oldies tunes, jazz standards, and originals in that vein.
And we got comedy videos on there as well, if you're interested. But for right now, let's take a listen to Too Much Heaven by the Bee Gees.
For our 1000th time.
Here we go.
It's much harder to come by. I'm waiting in line. Nobody gets too much love anymore. It's as high as a mountain and harder to climb. Ooh, you and me, girl, got a lot of love in store, and it flows through you and it flows through me. So much more than my love. I can see beyond forever. Everything we are will never die. Love is such a beautiful thing. Oh, you make my world a summer day. Are you just a dream? To fade away. Nobody gets too much heaven no more. It's much harder to come by. I'm waiting in line. Nobody gets too much love anymore. It's as high as a mountain and harder to climb. much loving. It's as high as a mountain and harder to climb. Nobody gets too much heaven now. It's much harder to come by. I'm waiting in line. Nobody gets too much loving. It's as high as a mountain and harder to climb.
All right, huh?
All right.
How
sort
about
of
it?
that lush, kind of very, relaxing, kind of soaring vocals too.
My
at the same time.
theory about why this video is not only suggested a lot by our viewers, but also it's one of the most reacted Bee Gees songs I've noticed.
I think it's because
or one of the Bee Gees songs that's most reacted to on
I think
YouTube.
because it
really highlights
their vocals a lot.
It not just wholly highlights their vocals, but I think it highlights how close their harmonies are. Especially when they're all singing these high. They're all singing these falsetto notes, and their harmonies are all within the same range. They're so close together. It seems.
Well, I mean, it's not. They're still using thirds, but I believe. But I think when you suggest that, when voices tend to get higher or any instrument gets higher, what is considered, if you know something about music theory,
Max was a music major,
or
in
the
college.
mechanics of the physics
was a music minor.
behind music and sound, as you get higher up the spectrum of sound, the distinction between notes gets the frequencies between the two get closer and closer. So in other words, if you have a third at a low register, if you have
So if I were to sing
voices that are a third apart in a low register.
So what he means by that is if I were to sing do
and I go do
mi
or me,
no. So if I were to sing do and then
Me.
do
or well, that wasn't quite in tune. But
do mi so
do me. That's what it is. Anyway, the distance between those two is larger than if we sang up here.
So if we
do me. So that the distance between those two, even though they're both a third apart, the range of frequencies is
narrower.
is much narrower. So when
it
Nikki's saying
seems-
that their harmonies are close together, it's because they're singing this high register.
So it's almost sort of less perceptible to distinguish the notes. It almost sounds like one sort of one group of voices rather than if they were lower, you could distinguish each note from each other pretty
I'm not
easily.
quite sure if that. Well, I mean, I'm not sure the science behind that, whether or not it's more perceptible, whether or not higher notes are more perceptible. Just because they're
No,
closer together.
I'm not saying they're more. I'm saying they're less perceptible.
No, that's what I'm saying. Whether or not they're less perceptible is what I should have said. I'm not sure the science behind that, but yes, they are closer together. Technically, yes. But with that said, I do think they are definitely doubling their vocals.
Sure, they are definitely
double
doubling.
tracking. So it adds to the kind of this lush, bigger sound. Because probably if they had just done single voicings for these falsettos, because it's a sort of a thinner sound, a falsetto voice, it probably wouldn't sound as full and as
Right.
majestic. And I think they wanted to add that to
Sure,
the song.
yeah.
Because it really is majestic, even with the orchestra backing them up and those lush strings and then the horns. I love towards the end, there's this kind of crescendo that the horns do.
Now,
and
let
they
me
kind of
ask
do
you-
this key change that really, Barry Gibb really soars with his vocals at the top.
It's interesting that, in the early or late 60s, they had a falling out, Robin Gibb and Barry Gibb, and Robin Gibb departed from the Bee Gees for like a year because he kind of wanted to be the star in a way. But it seems like after they got back together, I don't know, maybe it's just for their hits only, or what I've recognized was that Barry Gibb always, especially later on in the 70s, he always seemed like the leader of the group, the center, and he would get the most solo time out of any of them.
Well, yeah.
I don't think Maurice Gibb cared as
I think when they were
much.
younger, Robin would often sing lead.
Sure.
You know, he would.
But do you think Robin just kind of let go of that in the 70s at a certain
I'm not
point?
sure.
He was
Well,
like,
I think Barry was more of the writer, though, I think.
he definitely was.
Yeah.
As one of our fans pointed out recently, Barry Gibb actually wrote the song "Grease," the title song to the movie Grease. You know that Frankie Valli sings. I had never known that actually Barry Gibb wrote that.
Sure. But,
pretty cool.
I think enough about the history behind all this. I think let's talk a little bit more about the music.
We were just talking about the vocals.
No, I know, but, we got on this tangent about the history.
Well, we get on tangents on
I
here
know,
on Max
I
and
know.
Nikki 1000 Time Reactions.
I know. Anyway, to get back on track here about the track that we are talking about, I just wanted to take notice of some of the other instrumentation that's happening here. There was this kind of in the left ear, this kind of this slight subtle guitar that
Right.
would appear in the very background every now and then. That was kind of a neat little kind of effect that just added an ever subtle.
It's an
kind of
interesting thing
neat
when you
mood
think
there.
about these little instruments in songs that if you're listening on the radio and you're not listening with headphones, they're not necessarily perceptible, I guess is the word we're using in this video, but they're not perceptible necessarily, but it is adding to the overall sound of the song.
Sure, as I said, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Sure, exactly. Now, if you are listening with headphones, it's a nice little thing that you're catching that you're like, oh, that's an interesting thing. That gives me, if you're a musician, it gives me ideas for, future songs that I might record. I'm like, oh, maybe I want to try something that's very kind of quiet in the background, but it's just subtly adding something extra that is going to add to the overall picture of the song,
And not only that, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, that's what happens when you listen to the Bee Gees. You kind of get lost in the music.
Yeah, you sure do. Well, there was also another guitar part that was happening over here as well, which is kind of cool.
Oh, no, I know. There was, yeah. Well, also, there seemed to be guitar, like, kind of... Sometimes it was, like, going from to the right to the left, maybe?
Well,
did you hear that?
Something I noticed in the song was the rhythm section was fairly... the bass was fairly prominent, too. So
It was... I was going to say, it is actually kind of a thicker bass,
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. It's almost as if...
Not as punchy.
I feel like I can detect the notes.
No, you can detect the
Quite-
notes, but I'm not
they
saying
were
it
perceptible.
It wasn't. What I mean by punchy is it's not thin. It's not thin where there's a lot more highs than lows.
Sure.
know?
But what's kind of interesting is I feel like even though this was kind of a more lush and laid back song, that rhythm section was still present. And it was almost like, the Bee Gees, quite a few of their songs had a kind of a more driving kind of funkier kind of sound.
Well, not a lot of them, but some of them.
Some of them do. But
Obviously, Staying Alive and
Sure.
Inside Out.
But at
Inside and Out, rather.
Well, I would say in this era of the Bee Gees,
Well, when did this song come out?
I think it came out, I want to say 78.
Are you sure about that? I don't think you're right about that.
not
I actually think you're wrong.
79.
No, I think it's earlier 70s.
I think that's incorrect.
Look it up right now.
There you go. Once again, Max is correct. It was released in November 1978.
Wow, really? Wow. So it was the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack era.
It was that era, but this was post Saturday Night Live
But
Fever.
it's interesting because, if you watch the video of this, it seems like Robin Gibb's hair is a little bit more, it's thicker and more full than, I guess, the videos that you see for Saturday Night Fever.
Well,
So it seems.
there is
Although
something,
Barry Gibb looks pretty similar.
I do want to mention one more thing that I just reminded myself what I had forgotten before. I was just looking this up. that we were talking about perception of whether or not higher differences in higher notes are more easily perceptible or are more easily perceived.
No, they're
or,
less
or
perceived.
less easy or harder to perceive the differences than lower notes. And in fact, it really is kind of a cultural thing, actually, and just your upbringing, actually, whether or not you can perceive. Apparently, there are some remote places in the Bolivian rainforest where people most usually don't perceive the difference between octaves of the same note. So somebody that hears a G in a lower register and a G in a higher register, they don't recognize those as the same note but an octave difference. They might recognize those as two completely different notes, or may have some other way of perceiving it. So it's a cultural thing, and
But we were brought up in the same culture.
right.
So.
But it might just be it could be just the way you've accustomed yourself to listening to music. For instance, I did major in music, and Nikki did not, even though Nikki
I
knows,
minored in music.
Nikki minored in music. He knows quite a bit about music.
Also, I've studied music my whole life.
Sure,
You
this
know,
is true.
and-
But I will
you
say
know.
that there were some listening assignments that I had to do in college that Nikki, because he was not a music major, did not have to do. So I might perceive something differently than he does. Although I will say, in general, we perceive fairly the same way.
But you would not. I would say that because not only the vocals harmonies on this song were high, they're also double tracked.
Yes.
So that adds to
As to kind of a thicker.
that adds to a thicker overall sound.
Yeah, so it was harder-
which makes it harder to pick the individual
I
voices out.
agree. I agree.
Well,
I
then
agree with that.
The whole conversation is a moot then.
No, I don't agree. I don't agree with that. I don't think it's moot. I think it's an interesting tidbit about
But that's
cultural differences.
it is interesting though that there are all these high falsetto notes, and that's what's creating the harmony in the Bee Gees, especially in this song though.
Well, I don't know if you noticed that Robin and Maurice Gibb, they're taking the harmonies more often, and Barry's he's kind of soaring above it all and doing his own thing,
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of funny how just the way they even sang really evolved over the course of not just the 70s, but from the late 60s too, I mean, if you watch their band from the late 60s, it's just totally different than this,
Right. Anyway, I think we've talked quite a bit about this track and other stuff as well.
Sure, I could keep going on about this track actually, because there's a lot to be said. We didn't even talk about the key change actually, or rather.
Well, I did talk about it a bit. I
did
said
you?
there was a modulation.
Oh, the modulation.
In fact, I think there's even two modulations. But
Let me ask you this real quick. What is the difference between just a key change and a modulation?
that's what that is.
I don't know if you're right about that.
No, it is. That is when you modulate to a different key. That's a key change.
Okay, well, all right.
I mean, sometimes a key change can be abrupt, and you might say it's not. No, it is.
It's
the
not
same-
modulating, okay.
Well, it's not using steps to modulate, but that is a form of modulation. I mean, that's the same thing.
Itonization, that's just a
Tonicization
momentary...
is a brief. It's basically a brief modulation. A tonicization is when you briefly create the tonal center around a different harmony,
But then you bring it back.
You come right back to the other one.
But modulation is when you
actually change keys.
and then you're staying on that same key.
At least for a while.
Sure. Okay. Well, God, we certainly provided a lot of music theory in this video if you were
Sure.
interested in that.
Sure.
But this song was, it's very good. Obviously we hadn't heard it 1,000 times before, but we've heard it a few times, and it's a good one. If you like what you heard and saw today, please hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications to find out about more Max and Nikki reaction videos.
Please keep tuning in.